the book doesn't detail it out. I did the math with the numbers that he provided. His rate of return, his return on investment over that 14-year holding, purchasing and selling, was 1,513%.
Okay. Well, people, this is Kyle Reese. No introduction.
Man, I am pumped. I am so dang excited for this episode. And I just get on fire when we're talking about opportunity. And we decided to just turn the camera on because the momentum started rolling and whatever. So you guys get to hear just kind of a brain dump. But everything always comes back down to the definitions. How do you define money? How do you define assets? And how do you define capital? Right? And if we have accurate understandings of all of those things, we can really understand what's going on out there, right? And we can understand where to put our time and our money. What do we do with our resources? And so Raymond and I, just before we hit record on the camera, we're talking about just about how difficult it is to communicate infinite banking to people. I spent the first 3 years of my infinite banking career thinking that I was helping people by talking to them about it. All I was doing was learning ways that I shouldn't be talking about it to people. It wasn't actually that helpful for a lot of people. But, if we understand that money is just a means of exchange from value in one spot to value in another spot, right? We're just exchanging value. And then an asset is something that that puts money into your pocket. It's something that flows cash, right? And capital is a value behind that asset, right? So if we're going to take any particular person and just say, what assets do you have? I guarantee you 99% of people, if we're just going to pull people off the street, maybe even 100 people if we're pulling them off the street, most people would say, that their home is an asset, that they're, if they have a business, it's an asset. If they have gold, it's an asset. If they have Bitcoin, it's an asset. And they start listing all these things that they own, but aren't necessarily cash flowing. The one thing that flows more cash than anything else, they're going to completely blow by. That's you, the individual, the person, right? And the capital of the individual isn't, you cannot quantify it in monetary terms, right? And so as I've been doing a lot of reflection, and those first 3 years of my career, I had to have other businesses, other jobs, everything on the side so that I could keep doing this, keep learning it, keep talking to people about infinite banking. All I was doing was I wasn't getting money. I wasn't getting an ROI on all of my time and resources spent on infinite banking. What I was doing was capitalizing my asset, me, my brain, my ability to communicate. I was capitalizing that. And so now when I talk with people about infinite banking, I'm very confident. I know exactly what I'm talking about, and I know why I believe everything that I believe. Okay. And I know why it works. So it's really interesting to understand how many things come back to that word capital. And if we have the proper understanding of it, as Nelson did, then we can leverage it appropriately. I've been thinking about that a lot.
Yeah. You probably remember how many, do you know how many times Nelson mentions the word capital?
73 times in Becoming Your Own Banker.
73 times. And the book is how many pages?
I think it's 92.
So that's like almost every single page. And actually some of those pages, some of the pages are just illustrations.
Right. Yeah.
So
and some of them are blank.
Yeah. And some of them are blank. So you could almost, without doing the calculation and looking through all the book, you could almost say that every single page, the word capital is in it. Like he's always talking about capital. And capital, obviously, just from your Your little tirade there.
uh,
Yeah, capital is way more than money.
yes.
You know, money is, as you said, just the means of exchange of value.
Yep.
It's just what and at one time at one time can you imagine how insane it was when the money was tulips?
Yeah.
When
Right.
during that mania, they call it tulip mania.
Yeah. And you know what drives me crazy is these arguments out there by these uh conspiracy theorists, or not even conspiracy theorists, but just really like they think of themselves as more traditional, doing things by uh the original way or whatever, and they call real money. Real money is gold or silver, right? That's it. Just real money. Well, what is money? Like, if
Yeah,
money is just a token that exchanges value from one spot to another, everything's freaking real. Like, all you're doing is transacting a value from one entity to another entity. How can anything be fake?
right, right. Yeah,
I,
yeah. I don't
as
know.
long as both people think it's fair, that's pretty real.
Yeah, yeah. Like you know, we have the United States has its money, and all the other countries have their money. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks, some of it can look similar, but it at one time, you know, before we came up with paper money, money might be a chicken traded for some, you know, something else, a sheep or whatever. You know, that was the, you could say that was the money you had. It had
Right.
value. Of course, it could feed somebody. You know, which is what it all comes down to. You know,
Yep.
taking care of us. But
Hey,
yeah,
chickens are
money.
assets as far as I'm concerned, man. Those things
Oh
bring a
yeah.
lot of
Well, if
a
they
lot of eggs.
if they're laying, yeah.
Yeah, right. We let
uh,
we let the coyotes have the rest of our chickens because they stopped laying. I'm like, I ain't paying for you guys to eat and sleep and everything else if you're not going to do anything for me.
well, they became an asset for the coyotes.
I guess they did.
Well,
Uh,
food, right? Yeah, back to
right.
food. But anyway, yeah, that's great, Kyle. Yeah, that it over time you were creating capital, mental understanding of this whole process and the way to think
Hmm.
about it and way to be able to talk about it in a simple way, to get it across. But anyway, so what were we going to talk about today? Anyway,
Well,
I
we were going to talk about opportunity and and kind of how it comes about. And really, I think that, just kind of transitioning from this capital opportunity, being able to take advantage of an opportunity, it comes from a position of being well capitalized. You
right,
can't take advantage of an opportunity if you don't have the means to do it, right? That's why banking is so important. That's why understanding this is critical, because you're just setting yourself up to take advantage of future opportunities that you're not currently aware of.
right, right. Um, but you know, some people might say, well, I am well capitalized because I have, um, a line of credit at the local bank. And that that would be true. You know, people have lines of credit, equity lines of credit, and all that.
Hmm.
But that's not what we're talking about, because part of the thing about having capital is having control of that capital. Like
Well,
at the bank, you might take it and buy something as an opportunity, but um, if you don't control it, you know,
so there's different qualities of capital.
right, yeah,
There's it's really the way I define it for each of my clients is after kind of explaining what capital is, then I dive into the differences in the qualities of capital. And if you the more that you own and the more power you have over it, the better quality that capital is. You can have capital in other things like a HELOC or a mortgage and all that kind of stuff, and you can leverage them, but that you may have less control, you may have higher interest, you may, like, there's a bunch of different things that are outside of your outside of your control and ownership that would negatively impact the quality of that capital. So I think capital is one thing to classify, and then going into the quality of that capital takes that just another step deeper.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Being able to control the situation, like you can control the terms, the repayment terms, the interest rate to a degree. Um, yeah, so that's great. Yeah, I like that. That think of it in terms of different quality, different standards, if you will, of the quality. I guess you could also say standard. Um, but yeah, that's excellent. Um, so what else? There were when you sent me the text for what we were going to talk about today. Like I said earlier, that I looked at it. And that must have been maybe Tuesday,
Yeah.
maybe Monday. But I looked at it and I said, "Oh, okay, good." And then I never looked at it again. So weren't
That
there like two or three things? Do you
There was a
feel?
few things. Yeah, there was a few things, and I've been just like, my mind's been racing for the last few days, and I came up with a couple other ideas that I want to talk about. But first, before we dive into some of those things that I mentioned to you, I just want to kind of, I guess, open up 11 minutes into it, and just start off by saying that it's really important to understand banking. And when we don't understand banking, we don't understand the basis for a lot of that. And again, this is why I think it's really important to define those words: money, assets, and capital. But this is not a new problem for us. Most Americans don't have any idea what the definitions are of these things. Most people don't understand how to think about finances. But the quote to me that shook me the first time I read it was when John Adams sent a letter over to Thomas Jefferson back in August of 1787. He said, "All the perplexities, confusions, and distresses in America arise not from defects in their constitutions or confederation, not from a want of honor or virtue, so much as from downright ignorance of the nature of coin, credit, and circulation." In the
Mm,
1700s, John Adams is saying Americans have no idea how money works. And we're sitting here saying Americans have no idea what money even is, let alone how it works. And
yeah.
so I think that that's why Nelson was saying everything in the financial world is compared to what other people are doing. If just knowing a little bit more about how everything works sets you so much further ahead, because you're able to capitalize, you're able to take advantage of opportunities that people will just miss because they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, they don't really understand it, and I want to say they don't understand it completely, but I don't know.
Well, you
I
should
s-
you
I
should
said
speak to me about the banker. Tell our listeners about the banker you talked to the other day.
Oh yeah, just through texting, that one of my clients is on the board of a small community bank here, and the president of the bank was kind of surprised by what this client was sharing with him, that he had started a policy. And I guess in passing, the client asked him if he had, you know, you understand, or I don't know how he posed the question, but it was something to do with fractional reserve banking. Do you understand fractional? And the banker was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And that's not that's not the first time I've come to understand that bankers don't know that, because Carlos Lara, who's on the board of the Nelson Nash Institute, used to put on seminars that were rooms filled with bankers. And he would ask that question, and maybe one or two would raise their hand, and the other 50 or 100 wouldn't. They didn't
Yeah,
have any idea what it was. But I don't know. I guess you get used to doing something so often
yeah.
that it just becomes, well, this is just the way we do it.
Hmm.
But if they were to slow down, which I'm into trying to get people to slow down so they can think critically about what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, being taking money out of thin air and just typing it in and saying, here's a check for 100,000 or 10,000 or whatever it is, out of nothing. They don't have it in the safe.
Right.
And as we've talked about before, you can say that there is no fractional reserve banking anymore because now it's zero.
Yeah.
So they don't have to have anything in the bank. That's why if you go to the bank too, I think, I'm not sure about this, but I wonder if it's because you go to the bank and say, I want $30,000 in cash. They'll tell you to come back in a couple of days.
Yeah, I know, because they don't have it.
They don't even have $30,000 in the bank,
Well,
that
they
they
got to
can.
prevent themselves from being robbed.
Oh yeah. Yeah. If there's nothing there, they can't be
Yeah.
wrong. Oh
Well, it's
God.
funny actually. Jim Trotter said, "Give a guy a gun and he'll rob a bank. Give a guy a bank and he'll rob the world." Like, oh,
Oh geez, that's a great one. Oh,
that's a little
anyway,
brutal.
that is pretty brutal, but just taking back the banking function in our own lives, just for our own little piece of it, is so powerful. I think I'm in with my wife's policy. We're going to be coming up to the 5th year, and I can't even imagine what it's going to be like in another 5.
Mm,
My policy will continue to grow, which I just started last year, but so I'm in the startup period, where things are a little different. But yeah, I just can't imagine what my life would have been if I had found it when I was your age.
mm.
It
I
would
love
just be,
talking to people my age. It's like, man, you have no idea how well you're setting yourself up. It's not an
yeah,
if, it's just a fact. Is your
yes,
life is going to be
yes,
in a really good spot.
yeah, yeah. Like I often talk to people if I get all wound up and excited about it. I'll talk about it. My youngest client, you have to be 18 to start your own policy, and this young lady was still in high school, and her father had been handing her books that I had been handing to him. And she just turned around one day and said, Dad, I want to do this myself for me. And so she became my youngest client. I'm telling you, it was one of the smaller policies that were started, but who cares? The fact that she started at 18, she was still in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at what the projections on an illustration could be, and I say could because it's just a snapshot, it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's like insane. So yeah, I'm with you. I love talking to you. Love talking to people your age, and I love talking to people your age too.
Well, hey, that's why we get along.
Yeah, yeah,
I also
yeah,
like
yeah.
old people, so that works.
Oh yeah, I like old people too. except I'm catching up.
That's funny.
Oh, anyway.
So, one of the things that is, an economic term that most people who hear it today are going to forget about is time preference. Um, Time preference refers to how long somebody is willing to wait for a good or a service or whatever it might be. A person with a high time preference would be someone that we would classify as impatient. They want everything now, right? Someone with low time preference is content waiting for a little bit longer because they understand that the future value of that is higher than the present value of what they would have gotten if they waited, right? And so it's kind of funny because our entire culture it panders to that high time preference mentality. Is let's get it now, let's get it quick. Amazon
Mm-hmm.
2-day delivery,
Mm-hmm.
and you name it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
High speed internet. We could just go. Everything that we're surrounded by in our life focuses on get it now. Infinite banking doesn't. Banking doesn't. Okay.
Right.
And the
Yep.
other thing that doesn't is opportunity. Opportunity isn't here right now. If it was, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. You'd be going out and taking advantage of that opportunity, right?
Good point.
Opportunity is always in the future. So if you're living your life with a high time preference mentality, you take you take all of your excess that you get from your paycheck and you go invest it, or you put it in 401ks, or any kind of tax qualified program or anything like that where you're tying it up, you're divorcing yourself from your money, then you are removing your ability to capitalize on opportunity when it comes. You've removed your ability so much that you won't even recognize it, right? The only thing you'll recognize is what is exciting and flashy right now. Like, hey, Bitcoin is up like crazy. We're about to go into another halving season for cryptocurrency. All this other kind of stuff. Well, sweet, I got to get in. I got to get in now. How much do I have? I have $3,000. I could throw it all in right now. What happens, you know, 6 months from now when that didn't work? Because everything is exciting and happening right now, we don't have the resolution. We don't have the ability to properly think about it, right? Because it's just exciting. We want it now.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So I always liken it. I always go back in terms of when we're talking about everybody wanting everything right now. I always go back to McDonald's as the culprit of it all, because
Mm.
back in the '60s, um, late '60s, when they first came out, they had the ad on, for $1 you could get a burger, fries, and a drink, and you get a nickel back, and it was all about speed and efficiencies, and that was the beginning of it, in my opinion. But um, it's like 100x that since then. Um, so what were you? There was something that you said that I wanted to bounce off of you. Sorry,
No, you're
it's
fine.
just
Opportunity
slipped.
always comes in the future, maybe.
Um, yeah, that, and as you said, you won't even see it if you can't take advantage of it. If you have the capital, high quality capital that you can control, it will show itself, because your mind is thinking like that. And so
Hmm.
whatever we're thinking about, we're sending that vibe out into the world, and something will show up. Uh, and like you said, nobody knows when, but it will show up. Yeah. So, um, just as a, for instance, a client had started a business, and they started a number of years ago, but they just moved into a new building that they bought, and they renovated it, and all the expense of doing that, it was 3 or 4 times, 5 times bigger than the place they had. They had started some policies on the whole family, so there was 4 policies, and they'd had it for a couple 3 years, and they could get this low interest rate loan. uh how, what do I want to say, through a grant kind of thing. And but they had to show that they actually had the cash in that bank, or they wouldn't be able to get the low loan. So all they did was they took uh, loans from every one of those 4 policies, they put it in the bank, and they got the loan, and then they took the money and they put it back in. It cost them, I don't know, a few $100s to do that, because they had it out for a month. But the money that they are going to save, it went from like 6.5% to like 1.5%,
Holy cow.
which is something that you wouldn't be able to do. Maybe because the wife, she had said, well, we were talking about going to my parents, but we really didn't want to do that. They're in their mid 40s, they don't want to be going to their parents. And but they ended up doing it this way, and if they hadn't started this policy, there's no telling if they would have actually had that capital, because you know how it is with loosey goosey capital that's in your
Oh,
checking account.
you
It
mean
just
money?
kind of, yeah, it literally flutters away.
Yeah.
It finds a new home.
Yep.
There's trillions of dollars that are circling the globe every single day looking for a new home. And how
Yeah.
much
That's
how much of that pool do you want to control? It's a pool of money, right? It's all
yeah.
circulating around the globe.
No, that's a great way to classify that. It's all flowing around, and We have the ability to seize it. We don't know necessarily how, but
Mm,
and
mm,
when we can seize it, we can take it into our control. Then we can go deploy it on our terms, right? And
right.
that's where the opportunities come in. And it's funny when people are comparing, are looking into infinite banking. It's so frequent that that folks will get all sidetracked and excited or depressed, whatever, one of the two, about the illustrations. And it's like, okay, so where is the opportunity on the illustration? They
Yeah.
always forget about, you can't see an opportunity on the illustration. Like you mentioned, who would have even thought that you could take a 6.5% down to 1.5%? That's not on anybody's radar, but they saved 5%.
Yeah, and it was a good it was a good chunk of money that they were getting a loan for, but they just had to have all this cash in a savings account to show that they actually had it. In other words, the bank the bank doesn't want to take any risk.
Yeah, right, right.
You know, they want to cover their butts so that at the very least they're going to get everything back and more, right? Um, if you were to default,
Hmm.
like that's just the way they work. Like when you go to take advantage of something through their system, they want collateral, and they don't want just the collateral for the 10,000 you're borrowing. They want the 10,000 plus maybe another 10 or 20 or 30. They want it all,
Hmm.
so that if they have to have a fire sale on something that's worth 30 and they need 10 or 15 back, that they're pretty sure they can get it all back if they grab that $30,000 value.
Right. Yeah, no, it's crazy. So
It's
you
nuts.
mentioned one client's experience with an opportunity. Obviously, that's an opportunity that is not ever put out there on the market, right? Not something
Right.
that you could foresee. Um, how
Yeah.
would you, somebody who's getting into infinite banking, they're starting to systematically capitalize their policy, and they're just concerned that they've never been in business before. Let's just call it a traditional W-2 employee, just does their job, they love their job, but they want to do they want to take advantage of some kind of opportunity, whether it's a business, an investment, whatever it might be. How would you uh, help them to, or how would you encourage them in learning to discern good opportunities from bad opportunities?
Uh, I think that the simple answer to that is be be aware of the things that you understand and the things that you don't, and and be when you. I think that when you start, like I said earlier, when you start thinking about things that you understand that you might like to invest in or capitalize on, um, you put that out. That energy goes out. So if you want to invest your capital in things that you understand, like I built houses for a number of years. I can wrap my brain around an investment that might have something to do with real estate and and infrastructure and all of that kind of stuff. And I actually share that one an opportunity like that with people because I understand it. But something like right now, something like Bitcoin, I would never say do that, because I
Mm.
don't understand I really don't understand much of it at all. But that's kind of, I
But
think that,
somebody who does understand Bitcoin, they would say
yes,
do it, right?
yes, if they
Yeah.
really understand it and can see their way that this is a good investment, much like a banker, right? A banker wants to invest in things that they understand and are going to get plenty of collateral, as I said before. But investing in things that you understand is going to give you a higher degree of confidence in what you're doing and a higher probability that it's actually going to happen the way that you decide. Um, and you may actually want to start with the end in mind, as to when you're going to get out, unless it's going to be a legacy thing,
Right.
like a life insurance policy. Um, in the sense that you teach how this goes on and on, and then it
Right.
becomes a legacy. But that's, how about you? How
No,
would you, how
it
would,
sounds like what you're saying is you can mitigate risk by knowing more,
mm,
by having a deeper understanding of whatever it is you're going to invest in. There's always an element of risk in an investment.
right,
If you're not comfortable with that, don't invest, okay? But
right.
there's always an element of risk in almost everything that we do. So,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
um, what
mm-hmm.
you're saying is we can decrease our risk by having a deeper knowledge of the subject matter or the industry or whatever. I think
Yeah.
that's really good. I had a business that failed, and we lost a ton of money, went way into the hole, because we got into retail mattress. We had kind of appointment only mattress business. My brother and I had 3 locations, and it was good while it was good. We got in at a good time, but I didn't know very much about retail. I didn't know anything about retail before I got into it. I mean, I worked at Target, if for for what that worth,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about retail business. I didn't. I was new to sales at the time, and when retail tanked, when the economy dropped off, I didn't know how to withstand that. Right. I may have been able to had I had a deeper knowledge of it. Who knows? I mean, there's
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
that are always outside of our control, but that
Yeah.
does make sense what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. To do, and I also would say that part of having an understanding of things, like I said, I built houses for a number of years when I was younger, and I've always kept my hands in that business. The reason I've always kept my fingers in it is that I love it.
Mm.
I love the smell of cutting through a 2x4. The smell that wafts up. When I first did it, when I was, I don't know, 20, actually I was in my early 20s when I got into that business. The I loved the smell. My uncles were builders in Massachusetts, and my cousins are still builders on Cape Cod and all that kind of stuff. I just love it. So I'm going to just say, if you're looking for, you might say, well, I don't know anything about anything, except for what I'm doing here, and I don't know how I'd invest in that. Find something that you love. You love to do, you love to study, whatever it is, because then it won't be work for you. You just love it, right? I mean, like yourself, would you tell me that you talked, you spent so many hours working on illustrations yesterday, and
Oh
I was
yeah.
like, oh, geez, what a brain drain that is. But you loved it. You get invigorated talking to people about it. So you're in the right place,
Hmm.
investing your capital in this. Um, but maybe that mattress business, it wasn't like you loved the mattress business,
Hey, I
unless you
love the
did.
mattress I'm sleeping on now. I'll tell you that.
Well, you see, you probably learned something, so you know the best one to sleep on.
Yep.
but you didn't necessarily love the mattress business, so you didn't really dig
No.
maybe as much as you could have to learn that business, because retail generically is like massive, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's just massive. It is the market in a sense, So yeah, I would also suggest finding something that you gravitate to. Like you say, well, what do I love? Whatever you find yourself gravitating to that you want to spend time on, I would say is probably an indicator that it might be something that you really enjoy and could love, and that energizes you. Anytime you get into anything that sucks energy out of you, that's not your love. So stay away from it when it comes to opportunities to invest your capital. Um, so
Yeah, no,
yeah,
that's
so
a really good point. And I'm just kind of, as you're talking, going through some clients that I have that have taken on opportunities since they got their IBC policies going in the last 4 years. One of them is looking at enhancing their farm, and it's kind of a hobby farm right now. They know exactly how to make more money with it, and that's something that would be feasible if they were to take the leverage the policy appropriately. Another one of my clients, one of my original clients, they have kind of renovated their entire property into a wedding venue. I mean, that's just super cool.
Oh, that
And
is.
that's also super expensive, right? And
Mm.
they aren't necessarily entrepreneurial, but I should say they haven't really considered themselves entrepreneurial their whole lives, right? But they going through the process of becoming their own bankers opened their minds towards like what else could be done. And they're on a trajectory within a few years. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it's looking like the investments are into that wedding venue, that they're passionate about people, they're passionate about marriage, and they're good hosts. So you kind of combine all those together. Why not have a wedding venue, right? And
Yeah.
they know a
Yeah.
little bit about it. They've studied a lot in the meantime, and it could be in a year, it could be in 3, it could be in 5, who knows? But it's going to replace their income for their W-2 jobs, and that's really cool. But again, that's something that they know a little bit about, they are drawn to, they're excited about, but they wouldn't have done it if they didn't start by capitalizing earlier and
Mm.
going through that process of changing the way they thought about opportunities. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. And what they've probably come to via your guidance too about the way to think about it is that they now can start to see the quality of the capital because they control it,
Hmm.
and that they can, if it is something as you've described that they really love, they love people, they love the idea of marriage, what that constitutes and all that, that and then they have a long timeline, they have that view of thinking long term, that they can be patient and build this over time. I'm telling you, if they really, you remember the day you were married?
Oh yeah.
I remember the day I was married, and it was like the best day. So can you imagine having a business that you are celebrating something that you believe in, and it is the most fun day, even though you're the
Hmm.
one, making sure everything goes off without a hitch. You're still loving it, watching them get swooped up by the joy and love that's flowing around, and everybody's happy. And what a man, that sounds like I'm talking about it, I'm going, geez, maybe we should.
But you don't know nothing about it.
Yeah, I know nothing about it. And as a matter of fact, there's a place here in town that kind of just came out of nowhere. It seemed like it, and it's a venue for that kind of thing. And I'm like, man, that must be a fun thing to do. I don't know, maybe not,
Yeah.
but anyway, yeah, that's great. And with your guidance and patience, and them having the capital, great successes ahead.
What's funny is, there is an element of guidance that I provide, absolutely no question, and same for you. But so many times people have what they need. They contain everything that they need to. They just have to become aware of it. And that's what I love about becoming your own banker is I do a little bit of poking and prodding and talking and asking questions and guiding a little bit, but all it's doing is exposing the answers that they already know, that that are already within them. They just haven't realized them yet. And it's I
Yeah.
don't know. I just can't take very much credit for that.
Yeah, yeah. Except that you're being guided by your creator and all this. That you're just helping them remember that they do know, right? That they do
Yeah.
know. But a lot of people, including myself, uh, I'm guided still by other people, mentors and all.
Oh, absolutely. We need that.
Yeah, I think that's also why we're here, is to help each other. We're
Hmm.
meant to guide each other, and everybody has gifts and all that stuff. But yeah, that you're just helping them remember what they already know. Yeah.
Yeah. The other opportunity that comes to mind, and I think about this one all the time, is in building your warehouse of wealth. Nelson talks about it. If you guys haven't gotten the book, well, first read Becoming Your Own Banker if you haven't read it yet, but then Building Your Warehouse of Wealth. It's a short book. I mean, it's an easy read. And on page 22, yeah, page 20, 21, and 22, he talks about an opportunity where he was a forester, right, by trade. That's kind of how he was raised up. Well, he had an opportunity to purchase land uh, from a colleague and from another pilot. He was a pilot as well. Nelson was. Anyways, he purchased land. He bought it in 71, 1971, and he sold it in 1985. So he had it for 14 years. Um, the book doesn't detail it out. I did the math with the numbers that he provided. His rate of return, his return, I should say, his return on investment over that 14-year holding, purchasing and selling, was 1,513%. That's hard to find.
That sounds. Oh wow,
We
that's
get stoked at like a 200%, right? It's like if our money doubles, we're super excited. What if your money goes, multiplies by 15? Just this is why becoming your own banker is the solution for capitalizing. It's not the investment. So many people are like, "Oh, it doesn't compare to the investments, the mutual funds, the S&P, all the whatever." They want to compare it all to stock market, real estate investments, all this kind of stuff that you could get in the next year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever. Becoming your own banker, capitalizing, pooling money into a spot where you're building capital and then going and deploying it. That that building capital in the right spot, that's what allows you to take advantage of these other things. It doesn't matter what's on the illustration. It doesn't matter if your money goes up by 2.3% or 210% or 212%. Like, why are we caring between one policy and another policy and all these other things by or against another investment by these marginal differences in rate of return? It's such a stupid argument because 1,500% is insane. And I'm not saying everything's going to be that way, but
right. Yeah.
it that comes from a position of being well capitalized and having the ability to take advantage of a situation. And he made that call. He made that purchase within, like, I think a it was between 1 and 3 days of hearing about the opportunity. He knew what he was doing. He had access to the money through leveraging his policy. He got that policy loan and conducted the transaction. Boy, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. 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 Now I don't know if that's the same story as that I had read or heard, that he had somebody had come to him and said, "I need some cash.
Yeah, that
Here's
was it.
here's yeah," and it was X amount of acres, and he said something like, "Stay right here. I'll be right back."
Hmm.
And he goes down to the local insurance company where he had his policies with, and said, write me a check as quick as you can before this guy changes his mind."
I know.
And then the guy came back to him, what, a year or two later? I don't know how long it was. It's neither here nor there, but and then he said, I need to sell you the rest of this land. And so he said, same thing, stay right there. I'll be right back. But 1,500%, unbelievable.
It is.
Unbelievable.
It's unreal. And even if it was only 500%, it's still amazing. All of us would just like scramble as fast as we possibly could to 5x our money, let alone 15x. I mean, it's really cool.
Yeah, it's great. It's really
But
great.
opportunities exist like that out there for all of us. All of us, every single person, there's an opportunity out there. And I'm not saying it's this year. It might be in 10 years. It might be in 20 years. But what are you doing now to prepare for that? Because again, opportunities in the future, but we're living with a high time preference mentality where we want everything today. So we're not going to be able to be, to have the capital that we can leverage to take advantage of the opportunity. All I'm saying is these opportunities that are out there in the future that we cannot see are way, way, way more impressive, way more profitable than what we can portray on illustrations or, guesstimates on future investments and all that kind of stuff. It's way more
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And think of it as, like when you go to get a mortgage, let's say from a conventional bank, right? And you sign up, and here's the thing, you go and sign the papers, and you're signing, for is my example, we had signed up years ago and it was 3.25% when we moved here to Iowa. And you are signing a paper, and right there in bold numbers, you see what you're borrowing and you see what you're going to pay back. Even though they say it's 3.25%, if you do the math, it's like 80 or 90%, because you send a check for $1,300 and 100 at the beginning goes to the principal and all the
Yeah.
rest goes to them. It's like, and so you're doing the opposite. You're
Mm-hmm.
complaining about what's happening inside this policy, yet all of us, including myself, I've done it a number of times, that you have no problem doing that.
Right.
So they're not just making 3.25%, they're making 80 or 90% for years.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason I bring this up is to realize that Nelson, when he did that land deal, he was the bank, just
Mm-hmm.
like the bank with your mortgage. You feel like you're getting, excuse me, you feel like you're being taken,
Yeah. Right.
advantage of. You feel
Right.
like you're being taken advantage of. Well, you can be on the other side of that table. When you're signing that, you got somebody that's borrowing and you got somebody that's loaning. Well, actually, you become both of those, and you get to control the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whew. Wow. Really? Yep.
Yeah. It's funny.
Oh.
Just a couple more quotes that have always stood out to me. Henry Ford said, "It is well enough that the people of the nation do not understand banking and our monetary system, because if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." It's so funny, dude, because I
Yeah.
feel like as soon as people start realizing what's going on financially, they start looking into what are the other options. And then they're talking to people like you and me, like, hey, can I really perform this function in my own life? And the answer is yes, you can. Just make sure you do it right, because this is kind of a big decision, right? But you
Yeah.
can. It's so cool. So
Yeah.
cool.
It's very cool. And here's the other side of that coin. When you're thinking about, you know, doing whatever it is you're going to do with your money, your income, and you decide, well, my employer is talking about 401ks and IRAs and all these other kinds of things. You should really look into what those are, just like you would really talk to us and learn about this. You should also do the same with that. And all I can say is, uh, Pirates of Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, and the author is coming. Barry Dyke is coming out with number 3.
I thought
Just
three was out. He's coming out with four.
well,
Am I wrong?
it could be, but no. Well, he also wrote another book about income and
Oh, okay.
retirement. The number 3, I think he's coming out with this. It's either it just came out or it's coming out this summer.
Gotcha.
But if you read that stuff, and there's all kinds of footnotes, so you can go and look at the information that he's a great researcher.
Mm-hmm.
Read about this so that you and I'm not saying that you shouldn't do 401k. Well, that's another subject, but or IRAs or anything like that. But you should know what it is that you're getting, who you're getting in. Excuse the pun, but who you're getting into bed with
Yeah.
those mattresses, So do your due diligence on both sides, and
Yeah.
we can be the guide on, really be the guide on either side if you call us and we have a conversation around it. But yeah, that's a plug for Barry Dyke's books, Pirates of Manhattan 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. No,
Anyway,
those are good books. Well, is there anything else you want to add to with this as far as opportunity goes?
I guess quickly I'll just say that, like yourself, you have these people that want to start, a venue where people can come and have their reception and all that kind of stuff, and get married. Yeah, my very first client um, took loans to create a down payment for buying investment properties. And he's as happy as a clam about it now, because he actually started his policy about a month before we did. Um, and so he got right into it and just loves it. It's just another example of opportunity showing itself. It didn't
Hmm.
happen right away. I think it was the third year he got into it. But I think right now, I think he has 4 properties. And before he started this, he had 0,
That's
you
cool.
know? So
That's
anyway,
super cool. Um, well, Bill Lenderman was a financial guy in Texas. He passed away several years back, but he said, um, "Does having money safe and available to you when you need it take away any of your options?" Nope,
no, no.
not really.
Why would it?
It wouldn't, right? And so that's the whole thing. Is so many of us put our money in places where it's not readily available to us, and it's not necessarily safe.
Right, right. I mean, you might be told that it's safe. Yeah, but oof. Inside a life insurance policy, it's dollar for dollar.
Hmm.
Invest, you're putting, excuse me, shouldn't use that word, invest. But you're putting your money somewhere where you're going to have access to it when you want it. The other thing I want to say about that, having access to the capital, yes, you have to do a couple. Well, you actually, if you own the policy by yourself, I'm thinking of the same one that you use, the company that you use. You can go in and just in your portal, and you can ask them to send you some money, and then by the end of the
Hmm.
week, it's in your policy. Um, but one of the things I like about that process, stopping, getting on your computer, figuring out, okay, I want to borrow this much. Could you send me this much money? Just that little bit of time that it might take, and it doesn't take but a few minutes. But while you're doing you can actually be thinking about, is this the best thing for me to
Hmm.
do? You know, and the other side of it is that before you take a loan from the policy, to have a plan. How am I going to pay this back? What are the terms, that I'm going to give myself, and, put, put myself feet to the fire, I'm going to pay this back. Um, yeah, I think it isn't, when you're paying back a loan, it's like incentivized savings, because
Yeah.
you're incentivized to put the money back in, because there's so many advantages to doing that.
Hmm. Yeah, we do
Yeah.
things that either make us, we don't do things because we're scared of the consequences of doing them, or we do things because the benefits of doing them are so great, right? And it it's kind of funny with becoming your own banker. You're creating a system where you actually can, there's incentives. There's incentives to not do what you shouldn't do, and there's incentives to do what you should do, and that's really cool. You get to
Mm.
capitalize on that. So
Yeah, yeah,
anyways,
yeah.
well, thank you, Ray. I really enjoyed, again, this episode. I've been kind of jazzed about this whole topic all week, and just been, my mind's been racing about opportunities, how we can take advantage of them when they come up, and are we well enough capitalized for them to take advantage when they do arise, right? What do we need to do today to prepare for those opportunities to come down the line? And it's fun and exciting. So thank you guys for listening. And if you guys want to, well, whether you want to or not, subscribe to the channel and give us a little support. We would absolutely love that. And yeah, we thank you guys for listening. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you for joining us on the Sound Banking Podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on the notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for more content.